Welcome to On the Money. My name is Cynthia DeFazio, and I'm joined today by Matt Stevenson and Peter Lott of Allied Wealth. Matt, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic, Cynthia. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much. Peter, how are you?
I'm great. I love being here every every Sunday, Saturday. I get to sit with my buddy Matt today. Ryan is gone. He left the keys to us today, so I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
And I'm sure, Cynthia, by the end of the show, Peter will have found another boat to buy.
Oh, that's true, because we're up to 3 now, right?
Unfortunately, there's 3 now, yeah. Unfortunately, there's 3 now, yeah.
Excellent. Well, you know what? You can always find number 4. Well, obviously, you gentlemen have been so extremely busy. We talked about this when we were going into the studio today, actually walking in together, about the fact that the show has been performing so well. You've been receiving a ton of phone calls from people with a lot of questions about how to plan properly for retirement. Peter, what are you hearing more than anything else right now?
I'm hearing what everybody's talking about right now, Cynthia, is it's inflation. Right? It's nonstop. Hey, you know, what's going on in my portfolio? Their clients people are calling in, and unfortunately, they're in like panic mode because they don't know what to do. They've been, you know, through traditional financial wisdom, they've done it the same way all these years, and it's worked out okay. But now they're in a path that they haven't seen. And I mean, what's interest rates been falling, 40 years now?
Absolutely, yeah.
And now they're just going up? And what happens to that, Matt, when interest rates start to go up?
Yeah, so this is one of the main challenges that we're seeing in this market environment right now, Pete, Cynthia, is that, you know, the things that have worked so well for people for decades now, and, you know, with the stock market rising for many decades, the interest rate environment has fallen since the early 80s. It's been a good time to be an investor. And we're seeing more volatility in both the stock and the bond market now than we ever have before. And people have a lot of concerns about that, and that's really what we're here to help them address and find a solution for.
You know, de-risking portfolio was typically done with bonds, right? You buy bonds, you de-risk your portfolios. You had, you know, this portion of your portfolio was in equities, this other portion was in bonds. One would kind of save you if the other one was starting to go down or up, whatever the case may be. But now you're in a situation where your bond portfolio and your stock portfolio are going down at a very rapid pace. So what are you kind of telling clients to do, and how are they? What are you seeing out there on that part of it?
Yeah, Pete, and that ties directly to, you know, the topic of today's show, which are some of the main concerns that we're hearing from clients when they come into the office. Certainly inflation, interest rates being 2 of them that we'll touch on today.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to having a plan in place to be able to navigate the storms that we are seeing and will eventually see for many years to come, but being able to adapt to the surroundings with the market and the economy to, you know, bring in other types of asset categories, whether that's real estate, commodities like gold, international investments, to make sure that we stay in an environment where we can remain successful for perhaps the next 20 to 30 years to come.
Yeah, man, you know, a lot of portfolios, they're static, they're passively being managed, meaning there's not a lot of trade, there's not a lot of movement, if any, going on inside these portfolios. And they're just sitting there, and they're just kind of like dying on the vine. And, you know, we talk about a correlation all the time. You know, if you've got this old car that's just not running right, not doing what you want it to do, what do you do with it? Do you just keep driving that car?
Absolutely.
No, you go get a newer car that does the things you want it to do, that travels the way you want to travel, and moves and goes that direction. And a lot of times people they feel paralyzed that, you know, I'm stuck here, I have to stay here. But you make that comparison, that you don't go driving the old ratty car day after day that's going to break down and give you issues and not give you the performance that you're looking for, but that new car can do that. You make that change, and you should totally make that change in portfolios.
Sure, that makes sense. Well, obviously the topic of today's show, like you mentioned, Matt, would be the top 6 client concerns during the uncertain market. The number one that we have here first and foremost would be inflation. Let's dive into that a little bit further. How can that impact a retiree overall?
Yeah, Cynthia, and certainly with the inflation that we're seeing right now, we all feel that when we go to fill up the tanks at the gas pump. We all see that when we go to the grocery store and buy bread and milk, right? So it is a very impactful thing right now. It's the highest level of inflation we've seen in nearly 40 years.
Wow.
Year over year, it's 8.5%.
That's crazy.
That's astonishing,
that is crazy.
Right? And so, you know, there has to be a plan in place to combat that over time. And, you know, many of the things that we're talking about here, being able to adapt and weather that storm, certainly we don't expect inflation to stay this high for many years to come, but it is going to be a factor in, client portfolios, and it can erode the purchasing power of those dollars. And so having a plan in place to be able to combat inflation is exactly what the financial flight plan is all about.
How does the plan do that? How does a plan combat inflation? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so we're typically looking for diversification. So, using asset classes that tend to do well in inflationary environments, such as real estate. Typically, the stock market would as well. Commodities like gold tend to do well when inflation is high. And so, again, being able to diversify into alternative categories outside of just the traditional stock and bond mix is essential given all the uncertainty we have right now.
Matt, I've got a caller that called in, and his biggest thing was his advisor isn't making any changes. The advisor just says, we're going to hold the course right now and just stick that path. And I think in the last 3 weeks, he's down $80,000.
Wow.
3 weeks. You know what you can buy for $80,000?
A lot.
Yeah,
A new boat.
Yeah, new boat.
Yeah, there you go.
Kitchen remodel, those types of things. And the thing is, he's never going to get those dollars back. He's got to grow new dollars. That money never comes back in the portfolio. And to get him to understand that, make that comparison, we're going to get out of that car and get into a better vehicle, he jumped right on board and realized that the value that adds. And that's the things that the plan does. The plan brings that mathematical statistic that we can see inside of your plan. We can look at the bones of what you're doing, compare it to what we're doing, and if we can add value to your situation through less fees, taking less risk, earning possibly sometimes even a higher return than what you're previously earning, then it's time to make a change.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. When we come back, we're going to talk obviously about the next one, which is interest rates. But Matt, I know that you have a very special offer that you and Peter would like to deliver to the viewers at home today. Let's talk about what that is before we open the phone lines.
We absolutely do, Cynthia. And so we call our planning process the financial flight plan. And so it's really about getting to know you, building those relationships, but identifying certain key factors in building that plan for you. One of which is, your tolerance for taking risk in retirement, but your capacity for what you're able to take with risk to sustain your lifestyle over the next 20 to 30 years. We're going to develop an investment plan to ensure that you're properly diversified and perhaps add some safety into the nest egg to protect against all the uncertainty that the market's providing us. We're going to develop an income and spending plan, so identifying your guaranteed sources of income, such as Social Security, your pensions, and really running an income gap analysis to see from the nest egg how much do we need to provide to maintain the lifestyle. We're going to talk about a tax planning strategy to minimize the impact of your partner in your retirement plan, and that's Uncle Sam, as much as we can. Healthcare plan to make sure that we have those healthcare needs addressed in retirement, and lest we not forget legacy and estate planning, making sure that we have a plan in place to take care of your heirs once you're gone. Those are the key elements of the financial flight plan that we're going to build for you. All you have to do is call our number. It's 844-944-7555. Again, that's 844-944-7555. You can also click the QR code there on the screen below.
Matt, thank you so much. Peter, thank you so much. To the viewers at home, the phone number to call is on your screen. That number is 844-944-7555. When we come back from this very short commercial break, we're going to talk more in detail about interest rates because we know that those are one of your concerns as well. So please stay tuned.
How confident are you in your current financial plan? Do you know with certainty how the recent market volatility will affect your future hopes and dreams? How much are you paying in taxes? And how much are you losing to unnecessary high fees? You didn't work to save this money so that you could spend your time worried in retirement. Now is the time to take charge of your finances so you can feel confident about your future. Call in during the next 30 minutes of today's show only to set up an absolutely complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review that will result in your own customized written plan that we're giving away complimentary to the first 10 people who respond. We'll start with a full-blown analysis of what you already have. By running a report to untangle how much you are currently paying in fees, how you're allocated for risk, and what it's costing to work with your current advisor. Next, we'll identify your goals. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Where do you want to go, and who do you hope to go there with? Is your current financial plan set up to get you there without mishap? Let's design a roadmap to create a financial plan you can follow with confidence. Get the piece that so many people are missing from their retirement. Find out how having a written plan can make a difference to your retirement dreams. Call now to schedule your complimentary, no-obligation, full-blown financial review today.
And welcome back to On the Money. My name is Cynthia DeFazio, and I'm joined today by Matt Stevenson and Peter Lott of Allied Wealth. Gentlemen, a great show that we're having today, talking about some concerns that people are having right now. Number 2 on our list would be interest rates. Peter, why are those a concern right now?
It's a huge concern. It's a concern in the fact that you've got all this, it's creating all this volatility, right? Because they keep raising rates on us. It's creating all this volatility. It's causing problem in the bond markets. It's got client accounts just going nuts right now. Or people that are watching this, I know their accounts are going nuts right now, and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to combat these problems. It's unseen. Like we talked about it a few minutes ago. It's just kind of an unseen. They haven't seen this in 40 years.
Yeah, Pete, it's really an unprecedented environment, as we talked about earlier, because this is really the first time in nearly 4 decades where we're set to see continuous rise in the interest rate environment. It's been a great time to be a bond investor since the early 80s. A lot of us may remember, we could get a mortgage or a bank CD for 10 to 15% in the early 80s. That has declined rapidly since that time frame. But now, as we've entered into a 0% interest rate environment at the beginning of the pandemic, and we've had all of this federal stimulus to fund the stimulus from the economy through the pandemic.
It's caused a lot of problems.
It's caused a lot of problems.
In the beginning, it did some good, and I kind of thought this was going to come and happen. We were going to see this, but to see that they were kind of late on raising the interest rates, I thought they kind of held back, and they should have done that a little bit sooner, and they didn't, and that's why we're seeing this interest rate that's 8.9%, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, and they may be behind the 8 ball, meaning the Fed, on combating all the inflation that we've talked about previously, but most importantly, what that's doing to the people that we're helping every single day is people have that traditional mix of what we call a 60-40 portfolio.
Yep.
And that's what we've always been taught. Put 60% of your money in the stock market, put the other 40% in that fixed income or that bond bucket, and let it ride. And that has worked very well for many years.
Yeah.
But with rising rates and all the uncertainty here at home and overseas with the geopolitical events that we're seeing, it really is that unprecedented time, and that conventional financial wisdom that has worked so well is set to be a much different landscape. And that's the main thing that we want to address with our clients in building that financial flight plan. What are the ways that we can navigate and adapt given all that uncertainty that we're seeing?
Matt, we use a lot of tactical approach to money management. Talk a little bit about what tactical money management looks like.
Yeah, so with a tactical approach to building a nest egg, it's not the traditional set it and forget it plan. So, we're talking about that mix between stocks and bonds, but there are other resources out there that people can use, such as real estate, commodities, international investments, even cash from time to help us hedge against uncertainty and risk. But being able to allocate to each of those given market conditions and adapting, making those adjustments when we need to, and this is certainly one of those times, is the key driving metric to creating an environment to where we can remain successful.
Sure, that makes sense. Matt, what about stock market volatility overall? Why is that a concern right now?
Well, we know that there's 3 guarantees the market can give us. And I use that word lightly, but we know that it's going to go up, it's going to go sideways, and it's going to go down.
Yeah.
It can't do anything else. We just don't know when that's going to happen. And so building a plan to remain successful no matter which direction the market's headed in is the most important thing that we can do. But we have more volatility now than we've ever seen before. If we go back to the year 2000, the last 2 decades, we've seen 2 major market downturns at the turn of the century, Of course, we remember 2008, 2009, and very quickly the market had a loss of about a third of its value at the beginning of the pandemic. These are unprecedented times that we're living in. And again, it ties back to what we've always been taught works so well is not going to work the same way over the next 20 to 30 years. And so, you know, that passive or that buy and hold mindset that, you know, many people take advantage of, say in their IRAs, those 401ks throughout their working years, you cannot have that set it and forget it approach when you're in retirement and you need to rely on the nest egg for that source of income.
The younger folks can handle that. Definitely, they can handle that. It's when you get in that retirement red zone. That retirement red zone is your 2 year, 3 years before, maybe 5 years before retirement, maybe 3, 4, 5 years into retirement. That's that retirement red zone. You really can't take the risk that you can when you're younger, right? You don't want to get to a point to where all of a sudden the next crisis or next whatever is going to happen knocks you down 30, 40%. I look at portfolios, Matt, when we do the second opinion and they're looking at, and we're doing the look at the bones and putting in the software, the quantity software that we love so much to do, and you can see and you can look at their portfolio and see, in 08, your portfolio lost 48%, 55%. And now, they handled it back in 08, but now that they're close to retirement, taking a loss like that, if we were to come across those times again, would be devastating for them.
You know, Pete, that reminds me of one of our clients. He's worked with one of our biggest oil and gas companies there in Houston for about 30 years. He leads a team of hundreds of people in South Texas to oversee that part of the business. And when he came on board with us, he's very comfortable taking risks, or so he thought, because the market was doing extremely well at that time. It's been one of the best bull market runs we've ever seen in our nation's history. And certainly taking advantage of that can be important. But I had a call with him on Friday, and he said, "Man, I just can't stomach this anymore." He has certain parts of his portfolio down, perhaps 10 to 15%, and it's because he felt he was comfortable taking that risk. And what I told him is, this is really one of those times where it can sting a little bit to discover you're not as comfortable taking as much risk in the middle of that downturn. And so properly positioning now for what may come later on is one of the most important things you can do in building your plan.
Sure. And Peter, we're going to be opening up the phone lines in just a moment, but what about people who want to just stay with cash right now until all of this goes away?
I mean, that's an option, right? You can do it.
Yep.
Matt, I had a client call in the other day that he'd moved to cash right before Biden. He was worried about the Biden election. He's like, "I'm moving to cash." And he sat in cash that whole time, missed that whole run up.
Wow.
And then got in about 2 months before, about December, thought it's time to get back in, and now he's written it down. And that's the problem is it's so easy to go in and say, okay, we're going to go to cash.
Yeah.
But when do you get back in? How do you get back in? And if you're trying to work off your gut instinct that may or may not be right, and that's the only thing that you're going off of, it's a hard time to get into in and out of the markets based on cash or whatever you're trying to get in or out of.
Sure, absolutely. Well, Matt, I know that you and Peter have a very special offer to present to the viewers at home. Let's talk about what that is before we open the phone lines, and also we have a very special video, and I'll talk about that.
Absolutely, Cynthia. And so what we're here to help you build is your financial flight plan. And so as Pete just talked about, these are very uncertain times. And so helping to take that emotional decision-making part out of the equation as much as we can and using a rules-based approach is what we do every day. And so identifying the tolerance for risk that you have, your capacity to take risk to maintain your lifestyle over many years to come, developing an investment plan to navigate all the uncertain environments that we are and will see in the future, identifying your income and spending plan. And so based on your Social Security income, maybe you have a pension, what is your income gap on top of that we need to draw from the nest egg to fund that lifestyle for the next 20 to 30 years, developing a tax planning strategy. Many of us are taught to put those dollars into those tax-deferred accounts, those 401ks, IRAs, and at some point, Uncle Sam is going to come calling for those dollars because he is a partner in your retirement plan. And so having a strategy in place to get those dollars out of a taxable situation while we can help control that is very important. Understanding a health care plan going into retirement and having a plan in place for a legacy and estate planning needs to make sure that your heirs are well taken care of in retirement, that is all part of the financial flight plan.
And it all starts with a phone call. It's a phone call in to the number, and we want to get to know you first. We want to provide that assistance for you.
Okay, perfect, gentlemen. Thank you so much. To the viewers at home, we have a very special video for you to watch as well. This is about the Mighty Oaks Warrior Program. It's a very important nonprofit that's very dear to Allied Wealth. So please stay tuned, and we'll be back after this very short video.
Many of our veterans feel they need to fight their battles alone. This self-isolation has led to the staggering statistic of more than 20 veterans taking their lives every day. The mission of Mighty Oaks is to eradicate the veteran suicide epidemic and help our warriors change their legacies. We've been able to help over 4,000 veterans and first responders by equipping them with the tools they need to live the lives they were created to live. Our faith-based, peer-to-peer approach has one of the highest success rates of any program available today, offering hope and understanding to those who need it most. By aligning their lives to biblical principles, these men and women are able to lead their families, their communities, and our nation. It's your generosity that can make a difference in the lives of the men and women who have fought for our country and our freedoms. Now that they're home, don't let them fight alone. Learn more at mightyoaksprograms.org.
And welcome back to On the Money. My name is Cynthia DeFazio, and I'm joined today by Matt Stevenson and Peter Lott of Allied Wealth. And gentlemen, we just saw such an amazing video about the Mighty Oaks Warrior Program. I know it's very near and dear to your hearts, so thank you so much for letting us play that video today.
Absolutely, Cynthia.
Let's talk about, in this final segment, if you will, just a little bit about geopolitical events. Why are people really nervous about that right now, Peter?
Oh my gosh, Matt, I mean, how are you not nervous about it? You've got a country out there with, nuclear missiles that can pretty much annihilate anybody they want to.
Sure.
And maybe or maybe not, Putin's got a good head on his shoulders, so I mean.
Yeah, Pete, and these are the geopolitical events that create a lot of uncertainty in the markets and are a major cause of concern for the people that we're talking to, even our clients in the office every single day. But understanding that these events will inevitably happen. There's always going to be something, whether it's here or overseas, that creates uncertainty in the economic landscape. And so not reacting emotionally when those things happen. We talked to a new client that had actually sold out of the market in January when the Russia-Ukraine debacle began to unfold because of that fear and uncertainty. But we can't let that get the best of us. And the simple fact was that he didn't have a plan for the current events or what comes next going into retirement. And that's the biggest thing that we coach people on, is how do we take the emotional decision making out of the equation as much as possible and create that successful environment to navigate the next 20 to 30 years.
That makes sense, absolutely. So what about people that think that their retirement plan can withstand the market downturn? Matt?
Yeah, and this is one of the main things that we hear from the newer clients that come to see us is, I've got this 401k, this IRA, whether you've saved $100,000 or $1 million or more in that retirement plan, your 401k is not a plan. It's a set of investments. And so most people, when they come into the office, have not gone through that proper and comprehensive planning process to truly identify how their set of investments is working for them. They may be taking more risk than they can tolerate, or they have the capacity to take, right? That's part of building the plan. They may be using investments that are highly related to one another. And that can work for us if the market is on a strong upward trajectory. We can take advantage of that, but when we see these downturns, it creates that loss potential that is eating away at that nest egg in this current environment. And so really identifying how do we work to, where we can, reduce the risk that people are taking in the retirement plan, having a plan in place to adapt to the current climate, creating an income plan to reliably use the nest egg, those 401ks and IRAs, for many years to come and not run out of money in the process.
Matt, talk about risk capacity versus risk tolerance.
Yeah, and that's something that we've talked lightly on throughout the show today, but it's one of the most important elements of building the financial flight plan, because when people get close to retirement, they often aren't as comfortable taking risk as when they were 20 or 30
Right.
first saving away. That makes perfect sense because we have a long time to be able to save into those accounts and weather the up and down roller coaster that the market can give us. But when we're in retirement, going along that roller coaster when we need to take money out of the nest egg can cause us to draw money at much higher proportions in the midst of a downturn, and that can erode the savings at a much quicker rate. And so taking a lot of the variability and replacing that with the consistency of how your portfolio and the nest egg operates is one of the most important things that we can provide for our clients.
So really what it comes down to, gentlemen, is proper education, if you will.
That's what it is.
Absolutely. Well, Matt, I know that you and Peter have a very special offer to present to the viewers, and we have only a minute left in the show. Any final words of advice you'd like to give before we say goodbye?
Absolutely, Cynthia. And so what we're here to help you with is to build your financial flight plan. So if anything that you've heard in today's show resonates with you, if you feel you may be taking too much risk in your portfolio, if you have concerns about the interest rate environment, inflation, stock market volatility, where the bond market moves next, you need to come see us and have a plan in place for understanding your tolerance for risk, your capacity to take it, developing an investment plan to navigate all of the uncertainty that we're seeing, having a tax plan in place to minimize Uncle Sam's impact, and having a legacy and estate plan to make sure that your heirs are taken care of. Simply call the number here on the screen. It's 844-944-7555. Hit the QR code there on the screen below as well.
Thank you, gentlemen. To the viewers at home, thank you for spending time with us. We'll see you next week.